Well, good evening, everyone. I'd like to get started, please. So, let's everyone have their seats. I'd like to get us started. This is the regular Board of Education meeting for Monday, October 24th, 2016. So we'll get started here this evening. To start the meeting off tonight, I'd like to call on Mr. Loomis to do the recitation of the vision statement.
Thank you very much. Every school will be a thriving school that prepares every student to graduate from high school, college, career, and community ready.
And thank you, Mr. Loomis, for getting us started here. Well, to start off tonight, we'd like to start tonight's meeting by recognizing two staff members from East High School for their bravery and quick thinking over the summer. Greg Gerbosh and Freddie Carter, would you please join us on the stage? We are honored to have you both here tonight, and we would like to recognize your actions with a Board of Education resolution.
So I take great honor in reading this resolution. Whereas MMSD maintenance worker Freddie Carter and custodial worker Greg Gershbeck were working at East High School early on the morning of August 26th, whereas upon seeing smoke coming from a nearby house, Carter and Gershbeck called 911, quickly assembled a small group, and rushed to the house to see if anyone needed help. Whereas upon hearing a person inside the burning house moaning, Gershbeck and Carter reached in a window and pulled a man out to safety. Whereas they are described by their co-workers as reliable, conscientious, a pleasure to work with, and always willing to lend a hand. Whereas the Madison Fire Department credited the man with rescuing the resident and playing a pivotal role in saving his life. Now and therefore, be it resolved that the Madison Metropolitan School District Board of Education recognizes and thanks Freddie Carter and Greg Gershbeck for their quick thinking and courageous life-saving on behalf of our Eastside community members. Be it further resolved, this statement will be permanently imprinted in the Board of Education minutes for the meeting of October 24th, 2016. Thank you.
Well, that's great stuff. I mean, MMSD has all kinds of good employees and employees willing to go the extra mile. And I think that's pretty obvious and evident here tonight. So let's continue on. Let's move on. And the next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. And I move that the Board of Education approve the minutes from the regular meeting dated September 26, 2016. It's been moved and seconded. Any questions, comments, or suggestions? Mayor, your advisory vote, please.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda, public appearances. And for all our speakers tonight, remember we have 3 minutes per speech, and I'll call 2 up at a time. And so the second speaker, please be ready to come forward. Our first speaker tonight is Dade Baskerville, and Dade will be followed by Dale Underbarky.
Boy, that's a hard act to follow. I can't do that. Dave Baskerville, 121 South Hamilton Street, product of Marquette and Lakewood Elementary Schools and West High School. Spent the last 40-plus years in international business. Last month, I made a plea to you folks about higher expectations. And here I am again. You know, I heard at that meeting, and it's important that the gap is narrowing between the blacks and the whites. I think that was a reference. There's a progress advance, 86% plus on the process that's being put in place, improvement in intensive support schools. And I would say, in addition, you've made a great selection as your superintendent, and I am not a paid lobbyist for Jennifer in any way. Having said that, and I would say also that I'm well aware of the fact that you folks have day jobs and put in a lot of time and energy for the education of our kids. My experience is, though, that it's a tough world out there, and it's a world that the kids are going to go into, which is global, whether we like it or not. And there's an awful lot of workers out there. Some are paid more than American workers, some are paid less, that just net are easier to train than our kids. And I think part of the problem is that we don't globally benchmark our kids in math, science, and reading with the rest of the world. So again, I'm urging you to consider that context as well as you set your goals for the long term. Now you say, and people say, Baskerville, what are you concerned about? We're improving, we're okay. Maybe we're okay, but it bothers me that when I go over to MATC, they tell me that 70% of the kids over there need remedial courses before they can matriculate. Now, they're not all Madison kids, I understand that. That's of concern. I know that on the MBA test, and this is international, that the quantitative part of those tests that one takes to apply for MBA programs in America, that it's a no-brainer that the foreign students are going to exceed the American students by a huge degree. In fact, they're thinking about putting that aside when when business schools contemplate who they're going to accept. That's of a concern to me. There's also, and this relates to the best and the brightest, I check and go to the University of Wisconsin-Madison. It's one of the great schools. You go to Shanghai, Tokyo, or wherever, and you hear about the university. Do I have another minute, Chairman, or enough?
You can have 1 minute.
Thank you. Just to say, in the strategic program, science and technology, doctorate and postdoctorate degrees, if you look at the University of Wisconsin-Madison right here in our town, in the sciences, in physics, in computational math, in mechanical and electrical engineering, 65 to 85% of those students are non-American. Now, why is it? Are kids dumber than the rest of the world that take those programs? I think it's the basics in math and science and reading. Thank you.
Thank you. Dale Underbaki, followed by Christine Gomez-Smith.
Good afternoon. Last Monday, I listened to a National Public Radio summary reporting on educational achievement statistics. The report highlighted the increase of national high school graduation rates in comparison to the overall decrease in student achievement scores. The news story concluded with a cautionary statement from President Obama encouraging us to resist the option of lowering academic standards in search of desired graduation rankings. On Tuesday, there was a follow-up on this news release from state and local public radio sources. Pundits responded to this report by proposing that graduation rates might not be a useful or an accurate measure of free and appropriate public school education. Local, state, and national statistics reflect the long-term consequences of awarding credits and certificates of graduation which do not represent necessary skills and knowledge required for college, community, and career readiness. At this phase of stepping forward with our initiation phases of our at-risk plan, I encourage us to be mindful of how we are using graduation rates, GPA numbers, and credit counts as achievement for our measures for our at-risk learners. Last Sunday, in the Wisconsin State Journal, once again reminded us of the crippling incidence of homelessness among our district's learners. The Shelter to School headline highlighted the chaotic circumstances created by homelessness. The article encouraged us to use student-centered lens to carefully examine the kinds of unique supports and services needed for this vulnerable population of people. Homelessness is only one of our at-risk markers. We are all familiar with media stories focusing on mental health, AODA, and school-to-prison challenges. These stories indicate our at-risk learners are not in hiding and are not invisible. They are present in our statistics, in our judicial system, on our streets, and in our shelters. Some are able to use our school-based services, but not all. Too many are unable to benefit from traditional services, and for the time being, need us to provide them with customized and individualized accommodations to help them get on track. Our evidence clearly indicates these vulnerable people continue to fall through the cracks of our service delivery continuum. After reviewing our policy documents, I find myself wondering if we have carefully cross-referenced our service delivery information between the individual components of our plan. Could one of our biggest cracks be caused by assumptions that critical at-risk supports are being provided by someone else at another level of our MTSS protocol or social services system? Does each finger on each hand of our at-risk plan know what the others are doing? At this gateway of our at-risk commitment, I am encouraging our district leadership to require rigorous progress review timelines for at-risk learners to ensure students are receiving the full benefit of our service delivery plan. I am hopeful we will take on feelings of impatience and urgency and not be satisfied waiting for a full year before adding clear, discrete, evidence-based amendments to our at-risk document. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Christina Gomez-Schmidt with Madison Partnership for Advanced Learning, and I'm here to talk about the fact that it was Gifted Education Week in the state of Wisconsin by the declaration of the governor and the state superintendent last week. I'd like to talk about what that means for our district when the term for our district has changed from gifted to advanced learning. I think it's really important for everyone to know that advanced learning takes a broader approach by focusing on which students at any given grade and in any given subject could benefit from instruction beyond grade level standards. This includes students already exhibiting high levels of achievement and students with the potential to achieve more highly if provided the opportunities and the support to do so. Advanced learning in the K-8 grades is a critical building block for later access to and success in advanced opportunities in high school, college, and the workforce. Yet, instruction beyond grade level standards for students who could benefit may be given little thought or attention if one believes these students will be fine learning on their own due to their academic skills. Intently focused on the very important goal of getting all students across the proficiency line, school districts have rarely considered what needs to happen for students to learn something new each day in a meaningful way once they reach beyond proficiency levels. Our district looks to chart a new and different course by setting high expectations for all students, as well as providing systematic advanced instruction for students ready to learn beyond grade level standards. We are starting to do that, and I thank you for that. In 2014-15, almost 20% of all K-8 students were identified as an advanced learner in a specific academic subject, the arts, leadership, creativity, or a general intellectual area. In high school, students can self-select into advanced coursework at all grade levels, providing opportunities for high-level achievement and challenge in every subject and in every student interest area. Superintendent Cheatham, in August you wrote an article for Madison 365 titled Changing the Trajectory, the Work, and the Narrative. And I'm going to quote you from that article because I really appreciated this comment. In a community that is constantly referencing the achievement gap as an immovable condition, I want to challenge us all to not define students of color or students whose families are living in poverty as innately underperforming, as struggling, or as somehow deficient. Ideally, advanced learners are found across all socioeconomic and racial groups, and also include special education and ELL students. In reality, there are excellence gaps that we need to address to ensure that more students from these backgrounds can access and be successful at advanced levels of academic instruction. Just a couple more minutes? One more minute. These gaps mirror the minimum proficiency gaps with which we are all familiar. Without a focused, transparent, and concrete strategy to address such gaps, misperceptions are what continue to drive advanced learning implementation in the school level. We need people in the city of Madison and in our schools to start expecting and believing that advanced learning includes students of color and students from low-income backgrounds. Efforts to implement advanced learning instruction in every MMSD school will result in including and supporting more students from diverse backgrounds to reach the highest levels of academic achievement. Let's start making it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Now that concludes our general public appearances for this evening. Now I'd like to entertain public appearances in regards to the 2016-17 MMSD budget and certification of tax levy. So, which is really one of the most important objectives for tonight's meeting. So do we have anyone that's here to engage or talk about the 2016-17 MMSD budget and certification of tax levy? Okay, seeing none, then that will conclude our public appearances section for tonight's meeting. And next on the agenda, Mary Burke.
I would like to welcome Girl Scout troop from Randall Elementary and Blessed Sacrament. Girls, do you want to stand? Thank you for coming. We met before the meeting, Amaya and I, with the Girl Scouts. They are working on their government badge. So welcome, and we hope in the future you will consider running for school board and being up here on the stage. Never too early to start.
Thank you, Mary. Yes, looking forward to having you all up on stage here in the future. Okay, next on the agenda, board president's announcements and reports. Program support teachers wins gold in Rio. Amy Sprangler, a program support teacher in our student services department, helped coach the USA Women's wheelchair basketball team to a gold medal in the Paralympic Games in Rio de Janeiro. Team USA defeated Germany, the defending champion, 62-45 in the gold medal match. This is Amy's second gold medal with the team. Congratulations to Amy and the Team USA on this accomplishment. Gifted Education Week 2016. The Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction declared October 16th through October 22nd to be Gifted Education Week in Wisconsin. We would like to recognize and celebrate the contributions by educators in our district who push our students to excel. Thanks to all of our wonderful advanced learning teachers and staff. And our own East High, revalidated as Avid Demonstration School. We are pleased to announce that East High School has received a 3-year revalidation as an Avid National Demonstration School. Only 1% of Avid schools receive this recognition, and East is the only Avid Demonstration School in the state of Wisconsin. AVIC recognized East programs for their inclusive leadership practices and culture of collaboration, celebration, and recognition. Thank you to everyone at East for their hard work to maintain such a high-quality program for our students. Memorial staff member and student named Bezos Scholars. Memorial High School counselor Dan Maloney and senior Peter Yang were named among this year's Bezos Scholars. The Bezos Scholars Program, which was founded in 2005, selects 30 students and educators from across the United States to participate in a year-long leadership development program. The team attended the Aspen Ideas Festival this summer and will continue to work together to develop a project which affects change in their community. Congratulations to both of you on this remarkable accomplishment. We can't wait to see what you come up with. And finally, the Joint Review Board has an opening. The City of Madison Tax Incremental District, TID, Joint Review Board has a vacancy for a public member. The board consists of members of the City of Madison, MMSD, Madison College, and Dane County, and is responsible for reviewing, approving, denying, amending tax incremental districts in the City of Madison. If you or someone you know is interested in more information about this position, please contact the City of Madison. I don't know if we, that one
James,
needs an
I was
applause.
going to say, if anyone's interested, I'd be glad to talk to them about it. This is a position that's traditionally been filled via an old boys network, and I'd like to have a more open process for this time, so.
Thank you. Okay, we'll continue to move right along. And next on the agenda, superintendent's announcements and reports.
All right, thank you. I'm going to invite Mike Berry to come on up. Some of you may have heard that I've been coughing a little bit during this meeting, so I'm going to let Mike Berry do the talking tonight. We're here to wrap up the 16-17 school year budget. So I'll pass it right over to Mike. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, thank you. So this is our fall budget adoption and tax levy certification item. This also counts towards my government badge if it goes well. Okay, so here we go. We have two action items tonight. The first is to adopt a 16-17 budget. It's a single motion. This replaces the preliminary budget that was adopted back in June. It includes the June to October budget adjustments, includes the annual draw on the promissory note because that was not in place in June. It does not include the impact of the upcoming November referendum because we don't have the authority really to include that in the budget. We may need to revise the budget that we adopt here tonight depending on that referendum outcome. So we have the authority or the opportunity to adopt a new budget or to revise the budget anytime. And we may have to take advantage of that. By way of contrast, we have the tax levy, which must be adopted by November 1, and we don't have the luxury of coming back in December, January, February. So we have to adopt a tax levy. This will be in the form of a dual motion. It must be acted on before November 1, and as you know, that's a full week before the November 8th referendum. And so the solution to that is to recommend that the board adopt both a tax levy and an alternate tax levy to be used depending on the outcome of that November 8th referendum. So budget and levy are the action items. We want to start tonight with budget adoption and take just a minute to go back and revisit, recap the work that we did on this budget back in the winter and spring, and talk about what has changed since June when the preliminary budget was adopted, and set up, hopefully, a vote for the October budget. So here we go. Looking back now, so our approach to the 16-17 budget to building that budget was first, despite a challenging budget, and we'll talk more about that in a minute, stay anchored to our strategy as a district. And you've read that approach, you've seen that approach from us for a few years now. And that approach included some of these themes, which are also familiar. Repurposing funds to invest in our priorities. Without that, we don't fund our priorities. Fund the compensation plan, find efficiencies, control health care costs, adjust staffing to enrollment, and where we did have staffing adjustments, minimize the impact on schools. Those are all themes that were on the table from, December through June. When we say, despite a challenging budget, what do we mean? This slide makes the point that we operate under revenue limits, which are a product of the state budget and state budget process. There has been a significant change in how the state funds K-12. If you can see the long track record here from 1993 onward of giving schools an increase in revenue limits expressed in a per pupil basis of anywhere from $190 to maybe $275 per student. That trend was established in the Thompson administration through McCallum and Doyle and so on. You can see the sea change event there in 2011. That was the budget repair bill. That's the negative blue bar that decreased K-12 per pupil revenue limits by an average of $528 across the state. The increases since that time have been minimal, 50, 75, 75. The last 2 years, the increase in the revenue limit has been 0 and 0. So that's what we mean when we say despite a challenging budget environment. Now, to be fair, there was also a categorical aid of $100 per student, which was helpful, but it still resulted in minimal revenue growth for the school district and for every school district in the state. So this is how we landed in June. Kind of a recap slide. Less than 1% revenue growth and a temporary decrease in enrollment of 150 students. Those are some of the big parameters. We identified $8.2 million in budget reductions, including a decrease of 64.2 positions. Fortunately, that occurred via attrition as opposed to layoff. That was 1.6% of our staff in 1 year. We were able to fund the salary and wage plan. As you recall, we did steps, lanes, and base wage to the maximum. We were able to hold health insurance to a 0 increase by using an average of a 3% employee premium contribution. So we were able to negotiate health insurance down to about a 3% increase. I think it was 2.7. And then we introduced an employee premium contribution. It was a range of 1 to 5%. We were able to fund essential priority actions totaling $2.1 million. And we used $1.6 million in reserves carried over from last year to this year to bridge the budget gap. So we don't have a balanced budget this year. It's a negative $1.6 million budget that was planned for as part of a 2-year strategy. And then lastly, as of June, we had a decrease estimated in state aid of minus 9%, and with that, a companion tax levy increase of 2.49%. So that's how things stood in June. So here are some updates. First, the October update on enrollment. This enrollment estimate is really critical to successful budget planning. So the research department estimated that enrollment would decrease by 155 students in 2016-17. That estimate was off by 1 student, and the department promises to do better next year. So as a result of that, the staffing plan was very accurate. This is an aggregate look at the staffing plan, and when I say the staffing plan was accurate, it was accurate in the aggregate. There were moves made by the teaching and learning and chief of operations teams in August and September to move and adjust within this staffing plan as needed. But overall, the staffing plan itself was accurate because it was based on an accurate enrollment projection. Also new in October is this promissory note, which has its roots in the TID 25 project in the city of Madison. As the board knows, we wrapped this work up in August for a $9.27 million promissory note. The budget has been updated to record the first draw on that money of $2 million. And it's focused, as you know, primarily on facility improvements and technology infrastructure in this first draw. That focus will broaden as the next few years go on. And this is an annual process, so the board will have an opportunity to see it each year. This was a nice addition or supplement to the budget, as I think you know. Also new for October, the equalization aid and local tax levy update. So equalization aid was estimated to decrease by 9%, or about $5 million. The July 1 estimate showed that that was going to improve, so we knew it was going to go the right way. The October 15th numbers that came out, obviously, a week and a half ago, show equalization aid estimate was revised to an increase of 3.82%. So rather than a decrease in equalization aid, it was actually an increase. That doesn't allow the district to have any more total spending authority. It simply changes the mix between how much of our budget is funded by state aid and how much is funded by the local property tax levy. We're always really cautious on this equalization aid number. It's a very volatile number, and if anything, we tend to estimate low and rather see it improve in October rather than the other way around. So we were pleased with that result. So as a result of that, the property tax forecast will change. Again, this is without any additional levy authority based on this upcoming November referendum. So highlighted are the total tax levy numbers without the referendum. The levy this past year was $281,158,559. And if you jump over the June number, because it was up, we can actually bring it back down to the other highlighted number for 16-17 fall, $282.1 million. So a very slight increase in the overall levy at 0.34%. That creates a decrease in the tax rate and decrease in the tax rate percent. So a very flat levy without the additional referendum authority, and based on strong tax base growth, would actually generate a decrease in individual home bills, and we'll show you that in a second. Oh, before we get to that, the operating budgets have been updated for funds 10 and 27, the big operating funds, and the key there is as of 16-17, with the adjustments, we're still projecting a negative $1.6 million budget, and the budget that we're proposing to adopt is based on that assumption. So here is the motion on the budget adoption. And this includes all funds net of inter-fund transfers. So as for budget, it's a single scenario, and I'd be happy to pause here and address any questions. And if we're ready, we would vote. I'll turn it over to you, James.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Lights. Action. So, okay, prior to the vote, do we have any questions or comments? Mr. Merks?
One comment and one question. The comment is to say thank you to Mike and the budget team in general, and especially want to single out Mike and also the work Lisa did on the school-based staffing and things like that. I think that as a team and as a board, we're getting better at this, and appreciate the work that has gotten us there. Always room for improvement, and I hope we get better at it again this year, but wanted to say thanks and acknowledge and appreciate that. And then the question is, just kind of for a little preview, which is that we anticipate I guess the question is, do we still anticipate a significant loss in equalization aid next year? And that balance between equalization aid and property taxes shift, and does the fact that the loss this year actually was a slight gain, what kind of impact is that going to have on what we can anticipate for next year?
So we've done some multi-year modeling both in terms of budget work and in terms of referendum to exceed, trying to project that out. And for next year, we projected a decrease in equalization aid based on the fact that in this year, there'd be potential for additional spending, mostly related to TID 25. So we thought that we had that factored in. Now, has that number moved significantly? It has not in our projections, but it is a decrease, which is one of the reasons that we were trying to smooth out the tax levy over the next few years.
Okay, and I just understand that equalization aid is volatile, and this is based on assumptions that will not be confirmed for some time, but just wanted to temper the good news of the increased equalization this year with a reminder that less than 20, about 20% of our Fund 10 budget comes from equalization from state sources, and that we continue to be a very property tax heavy state, district. So.
Correct, yes.
That's it. Thanks.
Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, then I'll move that the Board of Education approve and adopt the 2016-17 budget as presented in the materials for the October 24th, 2016 regular meeting in the following amounts. Total revenue for all funds, net of interfund transfers, $422,443,540. Total expenditures for all funds, net of interfund transfers, $448,873,330, which includes funds 10, 27, 30, 38, 41, 42, 50, and 80.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any final comments or questions? Amelia Fires, vote, please.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, part two. Tax levy certification for 16-17. So here again, we have this without and with format, and then we'll try to explain the impact and the motion. So this presents the without additional levy. This is the same slide that we showed during the budget presentation a minute ago. This is what the budget is based on. The nearly flat levy, 0.34%. Now, with additional levy authority, that number changes, and it's highlighted in yellow. It goes from the 282 to 287, or just about $5 million. There's a little technicality in there around computer aid that we addressed via email, but essentially it's a $5 million increase in the tax levy. That generates a tax levy of 2.11%, which is less than the 2.49 or 2.50 estimate we were using back in June, and it's certainly less than the prior couple of years of actual tax levy increases. So under this scenario, you have an equalized tax rate that drops from 12.08 this year to last year to 11.92 this year. It's a 1.32% decrease in the tax rate. That's with the additional $5 million. It's unusual for us to be able to propose a referendum to exceed with tax levy impact and be able to produce these kind of results. Here's the little expanded version of the property tax forecast. Again, with and without, 282 million versus 287. And you can see the comparison. The levy is either going to be 0.34%, or if it's approved by the community and the board levies it, it would be 2.11% increase in the levy. Strong tax base growth. You can see the impact on the average home down the bottom. Without this, it's actually going to be a decrease of $53. With the impact, it would be still a negative $1.71. So those are the two scenarios. And, I'm sorry? Yeah. Right. Yeah. So here we go. This is a dual motion. It's a sort of either or vote on the levy certification to take in this contingency related to the November 8th referendum. So in our organization of this with Dylan, we split it into two motions. The first of which is the without referendum, and we would have to have that in order to have a tax levy. Even if the referendum were not successful, we have to have motion number one. Motion number two addresses the idea that that we would act differently if the referendum is approved on November 8th. So that's how we framed it out. And I'll pause here and turn it back to you, President Howard, and we'll go from there.
Okay. I'm going to put the motion on the table, then we can take questions or comments at that point. I'll move that the Board of Education certify the 2016-17 all funds tax levy in conjunction with the 2016-17 budget, incorporating an assumption that the November 8th operating referendum does not pass, and the total tax levy amount of $282,121,169, which consists of the specific components listed below in the levy without referendum column.
Second.
Let me finish.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you
Those
finished.
components, those are the Fund 10 General Fund, $254,232,451. Fund 38 Non-Referendum Debt Service, $4,087,409. Fund 39 Referendum Approved Debt Service, $7,999,159. Fund 41 Capital Expansion Fund, $4 million. Fund 80 Community Services Fund, $11,802,150, again for a total levy of $282,121,169.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Questions or comments? Seeing none, may I have your advisory vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries 7-0. So, and you covered the with referendum, right? Okay, so then I'll move that the Board of Education establish and approve an alternative 2016-17 all funds tax levy in conjunction with its 2016-17 budget, incorporating an assumption that the November 8th operational referendum does pass, and the total tax levy amount of $287,092,023, which consists of the specific subcomponents listed below in the levy with referendum, $5 million additional column, which are Fund 10, General Fund, which is not on my sheet.
257.
Is it the
257? No, 259.
Maybe we shouldn't do this. Okay, so it's $259,203,305, and Fund 38, $4,087,409. Fund 39, $7,999,159. Fund 41, $4 million. Fund 80, $11,802,150 for a total levy of $287,092,023. It's been moved and seconded. Questions and comments? Mr. Merks.
I'd like to offer an amendment for discussion to amend the Fund 10 levy to $257,554,729 and to amend the total levy to $285,414,301, both of which reflect a reduction of $1,677,722. And if there's a second, I will explain the.
Second.
Okay. That motion would bring our fund balance to 11%. It would pay back or it would stop us from having a negative budget, an unbalanced negative budget, and additionally add approximately $1.6 million to the fund balance, which would bring the fund balance to 11%. Our fund balance 4 years ago was at 15%. It's been spent down, some of which deliberately, some of which not so deliberately, and we are now hovering well above 10, slightly above 10%, which is not a good place to be. And I recognize that. But I do think $11 million is a place where I'm comfortable. There's kind of three pieces of why I'm proposing this. Number one is I think it shows respect for our taxpayers and our constituents, that we're being fiscally responsible, that we're not just using and taxing all the money that's available to us, but we're only taxing what we need. And certainly that $1.6 million that we're planning to take out of fund balance is something that I think that we can justify a need for. And I think additionally we can justify a need to go to an additional amount to prop up the fund balance to 11%. I'm a tax and spend person. I mean, that's my philosophy. But in this case, going to the full $5 million of authority if granted by the referendum, it doesn't feel like taxing and spending to me. It feels like taxing just for the sake of taxing. And so, like I said, I can find justification for about $3.4 million of that in terms of the fund balance. If we had plans for spending this, I would support them, probably. If they were good plans, if there were plans that had gone through a budget process. But we went through a budget process and we considered we made some tough decisions and we came out with a slightly imbalanced budget. This rebalances the budget and adds to the fund balance, so it addresses those things. In terms of the fund balance, as I said before, you know, the third thing is that I don't know what the right amount is in the fund balance. Our policy says that we should be between 10 and 15%. If you look at patterns for about, and you project out to what we have next year, we've been, as I said, spending it down a little bit, but I think at 11% that we have a safety measure there, and I think we're in a good place that we're not going to be tempted to dip into the fund balance, but we also will, when emergencies come up, when our projections are wrong, when we have tough winters, when we have flooding, we'll have funds there that we can handle those. The last thing is that all this kind of projects out, well, what are we going to do in 2017-18 with that budget? And I look forward to 2017-18, and I see if the referendum passes that we have $10 million in new revenue authority from the referendum. We have $2 million coming from TID 25, which brings us up to $12 million. I think we can anticipate probably something either through a categorical aid or new revenue authority, something resembling $2.5 to $3 million in new state authorized authority. To me, that should be sufficient for us to go into the 2017-18 budget. You might disagree. There's a little risk involved here. The more money you sock away, the less risk you have. There's no question about that. But again, I'll return to number one, which is that I think that this would send a message to our taxpayers and our constituents that we are taking care here. And so put it out there for consideration, that's it.
Okay, can you give me those numbers you quoted again at the beginning?
Okay, Fund 10 levy goes to 257,554,729, And total levy goes to 285,414,301. Did those add up, Mike? I hope they do. I hope they do. Pull out that calculator. I pulled out the calculator earlier tonight, so, and that's what I'm.
All right. Okay, any comments from Mike, Jen, or anyone, or any board members on these, on the motion?
Yeah, I'll make I guess a couple of comments. I don't disagree with many of the points that TJ's making. I think that our strategy just went a couple of steps further.
It's a half-step difference.
But we thought it was important. And so, yeah, the root of that is, I think, the fund balance discussion you mentioned. Our fund balance is at 10.1% of its 10.1% of spending. By policy, we have to be at least 10%. So we are a sliver above our policy minimums. So the general fund balance has lost its ability to serve as a tax stabilization source. It's lost its ability to bail out those expenditures that you've mentioned without violating board policy. So we are essentially operating without much of a net here, if I can put it that way. And when we crafted this structure of the referendum for November 8, with that 5-5-8-8 structure, the idea was that it would generate tax levy and individual home impacts this year that were respectful of the taxpayer. These are decreases we're talking about, not increases. So that was our logic. So again, I think it's a matter of degree.
So what happens, if I may please, what happens to that bottom line? We're looking at negative impact on the property, on the average homeowner. So what happens to that bottom line when you consider the 2.85? It's a higher levy, so I assume those are going to go up, or they will change?
Yeah, I put the slide back up. It's the difference between two different tax levies, 282 million versus 287. These are the numbers that we proposed, not TJ's.
Yeah.
The levy percentage increase was at 0.34 or 2.11, and down the bottom was the average home impact, minus $53.12 versus minus $1.71. So essentially, the voters are being asked to forego a decrease, as opposed to voting on an increase in their local property tax bills. And this is the result of some things that have all come together. The enrollment is actually down, which takes some pressure off the tax levy, an increase in equalization aid, and strong growth in the tax base produce these kind of results. That doesn't come together every year, but it does in this situation, so we thought this fit.
And just to clarify that the one number where I do have a comparison number is the current year tax rate. And my proposal, which is the second from the bottom, would put it at 11.85.
In between.
Instead of 11.92. And I said, I think we're not even a couple steps away from each other. We're like half a step away from each other. So put it at 11.85. And I don't have the rest of that chart. I don't have comparisons, but Mike kindly provided this on Friday.
Okay, so we have
An amendment.
an amendment on the floor, so we need to vote on this amendment.
Well,
Okay, you have a question?
Yeah, well, thanks for bringing this up, because I think it was worth to go through this exercise. But to me, the fact that the actual dollar you're going to get, taxpayers are going to pay is the same or slightly less. That's the kicker for me. Is let's just get what we can, and everyone's taxes will stay the same. I'm okay with that one, so I'm going to go that way.
Mr. Hughes?
Yeah, I agree with what Dean says. As long as I've been on the board, we've kind of had a policy of trying to even out the to the extent we can, what tax levy increases we see over the years, and that requires at some points that we will levy a little more in one year and a little less in the next year. And if we don't use our levy authority here, we are looking at a big increase next year. And I think it makes a whole lot of sense to, as Dean said, increase it this year where it doesn't have an impact on the typical homeowner, so long as their assessment doesn't go up. But we will build up a little bit of a cushion then, and we may need it next year in order to keep the tax levy in a more, in a more acceptable increase that we'll be looking at. So I think this is really sound fiscal management. It makes sense, and it's what we're asking the voters to give us the authority to do, so I think we ought to do it.
Okay, any other, Michael?
And I just wanted to, a little more clarification, I guess, from TJ. Fund 10, you're stating that shift some of the monies to Fund 10, to general fund, I mean?
To levy less levy less total and not change the levies on the other funds, on the referendum fund, on Fund 80, but only change it on Fund 10 by 1.677772, or 722, I'm sorry, 722. And so that's what the 257 number is.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any further comments or questions? Then we need to vote on this amendment, and the mayor, your advisory vote, please.
Abstain.
Okay, all in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
Of the amendment, yes. The amendment, we're voting on the amendment. So all in favor?
Aye.
I'm hearing only one aye. All in opposition, say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
No.
No.
Or opposition, say aye. Okay, so all opposed, say no, please.
No.
So amendment does not carry by
And
vote.
I wanted to abstain on this one as well, so, sorry.
Okay, so it's
5-1-1.
151.
151. It's an area
Okay.
someplace, isn't it?
All right, so now we'll vote on the main motion. And I believe it's on the table.
It is.
And so, Mayor, your advisory vote, please.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Any oppositions?
No, I said aye.
Oh, okay. Motion carries 7-0.
Budget.
I'd like to thank Mike Berry. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, team. Thank you, Lisa Quistad. Thank you, Deirdre Hargrove Pregoff. That was the trio that led the budget process this year. Just want to thank them for all their hard work.
Second.
Thank you. And the budget office up on the second floor, thank them as well for their work. Thank you.
And we should
Special
probably thank
thanks to
Mr.
Ross.
Hughes, who worked hand in hand with you guys on all this budget work. So,
That's right. Thank you, Ed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. All right, that concludes the section on the budget. Another year. Okay, next item on the agenda is the consent items. So I'll move that the Board of Education adopt and approve all the motions set forth in Section C of the electronic agenda prepared for the October 24th, 2016 regular school board meeting, exactly as said motions are written. By voting affirmatively on this motion, a board member expresses his or her affirmative vote on each of the motions consolidated hereby, subject to any express separations that have been made by any member of the school board.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Any separations?
Where's the one? I want to separate the one on the advanced learner.
Okay, well, let's find it. It's
can't.
towards the end, I know.
Which one is it?
6.10?
Yeah, right.
Okay, 6.10.
And I don't want to separate, but I do want to ask a question about 613, the East Athletic donation. So, but I don't want to separate it. I just want to, before we vote, I want to ask a
So which
question.
number is that again?
613.
Okay, 613. Okay. So, any other separations? Okay, so what we'll do here, we'll vote on all the items that's in the motion that have not been separated out, and then we'll have you comment on your 613. How's that?
Okay, well, yeah, I just want to ask a question before we
Okay,
vote,
why
actually.
don't we go ahead?
Yeah, well, I want to ask, and I guess I'm looking who's here, and it would be either Mike or Andrew, probably. I'm wondering how this donation to explore expanding athletic facilities and improving athletic facilities at East interacts with our facilities planning process. Anybody?
Did you guys hear the question? Andrew, do you think you can speak to that? You could not. Mike? Who can?
Maybe Kelly
maybe
can.
Kelly. Yeah.
Oh, good.
I could
It's
take
not-
a good
it's,
guess
it's,
at
it's a
it, but I wanna make
facilities
sure.
question that's being answered not by the guys with ties. I like that.
I like it too.
No guy.
Thank you, Jay. I'll respond based on my conversation with Chad Weezy when the consent item went through. Mike has spoken to Chad and is essentially going to put this money towards a plan for their field house in the hopes that the field house can become more of an opportunity for spectator sports. So putting in some seats, for example. So that plan will actually probably get done before the facilities plan is done. It might, in fact, create some estimates for future fundraising efforts. But at this point, the effort is entirely expected to be fundraised from East versus being a facility ask embedded into the plan. So they'll be going parallel and will inform each other, but it's expected to be fundraised.
So it's more parallel, and I guess that's why whether it was parallel, it wasn't integrated, and that's what I was concerned and
Intentional
curious
parallel.
about. So, and it's intentionally parallel. I like that phrase. Thank you. That
Thanks,
satisfies. I was going to vote in favor no matter what, but before you vote, you want to know what you're voting on.
All right, thank you. Kelly? Okay, Michael?
And on the same topic, too, I would like to give a big shout out, a big thanks to Kevin Durant and Kevin Durant Charity Foundation. He has continued to do very charitable work here with East and with some of our other schools. It's good to see an athlete that to his level giving back to the community. It's very well appreciated by our students and very well received. So that's very wonderful thing.
Yeah, thank you, Mike.
Here, here.
Yes. Okay, Amaya, your advisory vote, please.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, motion is carried 7-0. 610. 610, then, okay. I'll move that the Board of Education amend,
Well, I
before we
support
move.
this. I just wanted to, I like this, Chris, and I appreciate your group, and I just wanted to acknowledge all the emails in support of this that we got from all the people, quite a few numbers of folks, and say thank you for that. Your group always gives us some good information and shows up, and I appreciate that. So that's really all I wanted to say.
All right, thank you, Mr. Loomis. Then I'll move that the Board of Education amend the contract with RMC Research for an additional amount of $10,400 to complete the additional parent survey as part of the Advanced Learning Department review with funding from the 2016-17 Teaching and Learning Operating Budget.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? Mayor, your advisory vote.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries 7-0. So that concludes our consent items for tonight. The next item on the agenda is
Instruction work group.
Instruction Work Group. Mr. Merks.
Okay, we, as a rarity, have two items that came to the instruction work group this month, both of which are up for a vote, which is not often the case. One of them is the special education plan, which has been more than a year in development. It's been, in my opinion, a very good process. We've seen a lot of evolution in both the thinking and the organization of the plan, and I think also in many of the details that details that are important to various members of the board and also members of the community. I think we've seen good responsiveness. As I've said multiple times, the public input process on this, I think, has been exemplary, and I've been very pleased with it. And now we have the plan before us for approval. And so, I guess, if there's any discussion before a motion is made on that, Anna.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to the team. I know in our last discussion, we had offered up a few more recommendations, so I'm very pleased to see that there has been a goal included that acknowledges a reduction in the exclusionary practices of seclusion and restraint. I think that's the right direction, and it's the direction we want to be heading in. So thank you.
Along similar lines, there was some confusion because I read my board packet on Friday morning before the revised plan had been posted on board docs, and therefore did not see the changes in language around cluster grouping that were on page 20 until literally when I sat down here tonight. And I've been sitting here kind of going back and forth between the language and the proposed amendment that I sent out to board members earlier today. And though my preference would be to have the 25%, the 30% that appears in the monitoring on page 112 and 113 changed to 25%, and a more explicit monitoring around speech and language only. I think that the changes on page 20 are a move in the right direction and are sufficient at this time, but it's something that as we go forward, I think keeping an eye on is important. So I will not be offering that amendment. Yes?
Could you just clarify what your proposed amendment was?
My proposed amendment was, and I can even read it to you, because I had it ready to go. The proposed amendment was change the language that says with no more than 30% students with disabilities in the class under cluster grouping on page 112/113 to with no more than 30% of students with disabilities in the class, including those designated as speech and language only, and no more than 25% of students with disabilities in the class exclusive of speech and language only designated students. That was the proposed amendment. I think that those ideas are reflected in the language on page 20. As I said, in my heart of hearts, I'd prefer to have them on page 112-13 also, but I think I'm going to leave it alone, so I will make the motion. I move that the Board of Education approve the 2016-19 Special Education Plan dated October 19th, 2016, as set forth in the materials prepared for the October 24th, 2016 regular meeting. Is there a second? Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Oh, advisory vote, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Advisory vote is yes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? That passes 7-0. We also have a plan that was not as long in development, but reflects some ongoing work in the district, and that is the at-risk plan. And this was presented initially to the Board of Education at the instructional work group meeting this month, and it is a requirement for DPI, a requirement that we have not fulfilled to the best of our abilities in the recent past, and will be by passing this plan, as well as one of our speakers tonight said, paying closer attention to what we mean by at risk and how we are communicating with the families and what we are, and we are communicating among ourselves with what we are doing for our students who are at risk. So I think that this is a big and good step. Any comments on the at-risk plan before I make a motion? Yes, Dean.
Yeah, it's just, I think we recognize there's just not a lot of stuff here yet. And as we build this up to really address comments made by Dell and others, and also just us, we know we want more in here. So this is where we started, and hopefully there'll be something more thorough like the special ed plan that will give us the guts of this thing and build it up more.
James?
Yes. Do we have a plan yet? I mean, I thought what we were doing here was more of compliance work at this time. So, I mean, we're talking about a plan, but have we really delved into a plan and talking about students, the number of students and those things? I mean, do we really have a plan?
I think that, I mean, it's called the at-risk plan because that is what it's called per DPI. And this gets us in compliance.
So should it be a compliance plan? Should that be the wording? No?
I don't know about that, Dylan.
So I don't think so. So I think there are two ways to look at it. I think there is a baseline plan, which does what the statute says to, which is how do you define at risk of not graduating high school using the statutory definition, and how will you provide interventions and or services for those students. And that is here. We indicate that we'll use the SSIT team. We have a schedule for pulling data. We will provide. But what I think it can evolve into is our bigger view of our use of ninth grade on track, our expectations around transitions and how adults can work better to meet those needs. And so I do think we have a plan. I think we can have a more robust plan over time. And so it does get us into compliance, but I don't think that diminishes what it is now. I just think it can be better in the future.
I'll add that this needs annual approval. And so that this is the 2016-17. I hope at this time next year that perhaps we have something that reflects this.
And I will just add one other thing. The exercise of having to put the at-risk plan on paper not only helped us codify what we're doing and fine-tune it in the current state, but to identify areas where it needs to be stronger. So we're excited about the potential of improving upon this plan in the future.
Okay, any further discussion before a motion? Then I move that the Board of Education approve the 2016-2017 plan for students at risk of not graduating as set forth in the documents prepared for the October 24th, 2016 regular meeting, which moving forward shall be subject to annual review by no later than August 15th.
Second.
All right, advisory vote.
Aye.
Advisory vote, yes. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? That passes 7-1-0.
TJ, can I say something?
And Jen.
Thank you. I just wanted to add to TJ and Anna's comments, thanking John Harper, his team, all the people who helped him, all the parents, teachers, students, community members who gave feedback on the plan. It really was extremely well done. So thank you, John. And I would like to thank Dylan and Caroline Racine Gillis for pulling together our at-risk plan, even though it wasn't on their to-do list originally. And I'm just extremely grateful for their additional efforts. So going above and beyond as usual. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the date and topics for the next instruction work group are on November 7th. We will have a review of progress on the English Language Learner Plan and what I assume is a very, very initial discussion of middle school planning around middle school. So that's November 7th, both good topics, and from what I understand, we have a very, very full agenda in December.
All right.
That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Merckx. Next on the agenda, Operations Work Group, Mr. Hughes.
Yes, thank you. We had a meeting on October 17th, and we discussed the 2016-17 budget and tax levy certification, which we have adopted this evening. We also commenced our consideration of the 2017-18 budget with a kind of broad-ranging and preliminary discussion, particularly of developing priority actions for the next year's budget. And we also talked about the TID 25 funds utilization plan. which we will draw down gradually over 5 years in order to address some of our priorities and innovation possibilities, as well as maintenance needs and some technology and infrastructure work. Our next meeting is scheduled for November 14th. I suspect we may talk a little bit about the results of the referendum and what we make of them, but we will also continue our discussion of framing the issues for our next year's budget. We will talk about a few policies, particularly those that apply to Board of Education members, and we may have an employee handbook update. So that's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Well, if there are no questions for operations, then that will conclude our reports from our work groups. Next item on the agenda then would be other reports to the board. The first other report to the board is City of Madison Education Committee. Anna, when the last time you've been to our meeting?
I'm sad to report that we had no meeting since the last regular meeting. We did not have quorum. Our next meeting time will be November 9th, 2016.
Okay, I guess we'll see if that one actually takes place or not. Okay. All right, thanks, Anna.
We used to meet.
We show up.
Let's see. Okay, next item on the agenda, Student Senate.
So since the last time that I gave an update, we have made progress. Our president this year, Danielle Wendricks from La Follette, she's continued an initiative that we've been working on from last year, which is improving our health curriculum within our schools. So to make sure that we gain input from a lot of students from diverse perspectives, even though our group is sort of representative of the students, we want to make sure that we can reach anybody who wants to provide their feedback. We're going to be distributing a health survey to the health classes within the schools. So with the permission of the health teachers, students will spend 10 to 15 minutes taking a survey asking about what they're hoping to learn in their health classes this year, who they feel would be good community partners, where they would get access to resources that they may not be able to have in schools. And then following the completion of their class, they'll take another survey just to see whether they learned those concepts, whether they felt it was a safe environment where they could bring up their concerns, and whether they found that those community partners were helpful and did provide the resources that they wanted. So that's something that we're really excited to see. We aren't quite sure how we'll be analyzing the data yet because we don't want to make it subjective, but we'll inform you once we have a better update on that. We're trying to implement a leadership council this year to make sure that students step up to the challenge and can take our initiatives further. So that's something else that we're working on. So students will be applying for that shortly. Aside from that, we're really excited to work with the superintendent at one of her quarterly meetings with the ACP and Personalized Pathways team. There's supposed to be a great group out there, so we're excited to see the 30 to 35 students that are present.
Thank you, Amir. Any questions for Student Senate? All right, seeing none, thanks again. All right, let's continue to move on. Next item on the agenda, other business, and we have a couple of items here. First one, disallowance of claim, and I'll move that the Board of Education disallow a claim for injuries and damages totaling $100,000 with said claim having been served on the superintendent of schools, legal counsel, and other district employees on or about July 7, 2016 on behalf of M, a minor child, and his parents, SS, under Wisconsin Statute Section 893.80, and said claim alleging liability-based negligence by district personnel.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Questions and comments? Seeing none, Mayor, your advisory vote, please.
Abstain.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? Okay, motion carries 701. Okay, next item on the agenda, graduates. I'll move that the Board of Education approve the list of graduates granted diplomas from the start date of 2015-16 school year through the start date of 2016-17 school year.
Second.
It's been moved and second. So granted diplomas. Any questions or comments about?
Just congratulations, you know, that, right?
I think that's correct. All right, Amaya, what do you say? You- All right, all in favor? Any opposition? All right, motion carries 7-0. All right, any old or new business to be brought before the board this evening? Seeing none, I'll move adjournment. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, we're adjourned.